I've experienced a lot of incredible watches, and I've experienced a lot of incredible watches that are great value for money. But I've never experienced a watch that is as good as this for the money that they're asking as this Glycine Combat Sub. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. And I'm talking about a particular Glycine Combat Sub today. This brown dial, brown bezel insert version of it. But today, although I'm going to be reviewing this specific model, to be honest, I'm kind of going to be talking about the Glycine Combat range in total, because the Glycine Combat range seems to be quite large and amazing value. There are lots of different color dials, different variations of the dials, and even different materials. This one here is a stainless steel, which is probably my preferred option, but there's also some bronze versions as well. You can even find these watches in different case sizes, which is actually rather exciting. But depending on which one you pick, depends on the price. Some of these are incredible value at around about 550 Australian dollars. But they do range all the way up to about 1,800 Australian dollars. So you really need to pick the one that you want at the right price and shop around. Now, the best value I've seen for these ones is on Ashford.com. I do mention Ashford.com a few times because, to be honest, if they happen to have a watch that you're interested in, they tend to be the cheapest. I am also an affiliate member with them, but that is not the reason why I'm bringing that up. But because I'm going to leave a link down to one of these watches in the description below. Now, the watch I'm going to show you today isn't actually mine. I had the opportunity to borrow this watch from Mark. So thank you so much to Mark for lending me this watch. And he didn't just lend it to me, he let me hold on to it for a few months, which really gave me the opportunity to get to know this watch so I can do a proper in-depth review. Now, speaking about that price of 550 Australian dollars, if you can find one of these watches at 550 Australian dollars, and there are quite a few of them available, I think you're probably going to be getting one of the best quality watches for that price that there is out there on the market. But I am going to talk a little bit more about that price, but I'll do that at the end of the video. For now, let's flip the camera. Let's check out this Glycine Combat Sub. Now, this particular Glycine Combat Sub is the GL0171, and you've got a lot going on here, especially for the sort of price that you can get these at. Firstly, the packaging is really good, but what you're getting inside is a watch with a lot to offer, because it's a Swiss-made watch with a Swiss-made automatic movement with 200 meters of water resistance. And I think it looks great. And not only do I think it actually looks really good, but it's well made, and it's extremely well made. Well beyond what I would expect at the price that you can get these at. At the full RRP from Glycine, I'm kind of getting that, yeah, okay, there needs to be a reasonable quality. But these ones at these low prices on some of these grey market dealers are incredible value. When we look closer at the watch, the dial itself is actually relatively simple. It has a matte black dial. We've got some markings all around the outside in white. They are your minute markers and second markers. We've then got a fair bit of lume on the numbers and on the markers, which give you a slightly different sort of off-white colour. Lume inside the hands as well, and that gives you another slightly off-white colour. So it gives you a little bit of contrast of white, black, off-white, Glycine Combat Automatic, and 20 atmospheres in white as well. So you've got a few different colors going on. Whilst we're looking at that, the lume on this watch is fantastic. Exactly what you really hope from a dive watch. But then they go as far as doing a color matched date wheel at the 3 o'clock, which is nice, and you don't often see that in some of these sort of well-known brands, which is quite surprising. But I think it fits in nicely there at the 3 o'clock, being color matched, which is fantastic. Has quite an interesting second hand, especially the little paddle tip there, which is sort of a rectangle, which is fine, and I think that's kind of cool. And also there's sort of the hour hand there, sort of looks like a Mercedes hour hand, but not a Mercedes hour hand because it's missing the bits in between. So they're using some well-known sort of features and forms, but doing it a little bit differently. Hands are also polished silver, so it's fairly simple, but I think it really looks quite good, especially because you've got that matte background, gives you a little bit of a shining sort of texture there. That's under a nice piece of flat sapphire crystal, and it's actually a really nice piece of crystal as well. And I'm pretty sure there's some anti-reflective coating there, because as we sort of hit the light there, as we try and, yeah, look at that, it sees through that straight away, nice and easy. Surrounded by a nice big diver's bezel, 120 click unidirectional, and a really, really nice action. It really feels like a sort of luxury watch bezel action here. It's muted, but just has such a lovely feel to it. It's gentle, soft, but also firm. So it's got a nice action to it and absolutely no back play at all. There's a triangle at the 12 with a lume pip, and what you'll see there is also a little bit of a lump there, which is a bit different to the rest of the coin edge bezel. Now this would be quite good when you go diving with this watch. If you're not wearing gloves, you can actually sort of feel where that is. So you can sort of find where the 12 o'clock is on the bezel. So that's actually quite a helpful thing to have. Now, as I mentioned, you can get these watches in a whole heap of different configurations, different colors, different dial configurations, even some different material types and different sizes. This one here is the 42.5 millimeter case diameter. This is probably more the standard size and the one that you'll get at the best price as well. The thing that stands out though with this watch is the width. This is 10.5 millimeters. 10.5 millimeters on a dive watch. That is outstanding and it's noticeable when you're wearing it. The lug to lug is 50 millimeters. The lug width is 22 millimeters, and size to my 17 centimeter wrist, it is 151 grams. Now there are two types of finishing on this watch. On the tops of the lugs, we have a circular polishing done really nicely, transitioning straight across to a polished side. So polished and brushed, no chamfer edge on this one here. We have a semi-guarded crown with the Glycine logo. As we tip it up, you'll see there is also brushing on the tops of those guards there to match in with the tops of the lugs, which is quite nice, transitioning across to those polished sides there. Of course, having 200 meters of water resistance, we have a screw down crown, manual winding, there is a quick set date position, and it also does have hacking. Now this one does contain a Glycine movement. This is the movement up here. I believe it is a variation of an ETA movement. But what is really always interesting to see is how different movements are performing. So let's stick this one on the time grapher. So as you can see, it's a high beat movement running at 28,800 vibrations per hour, minimal beat error, very nice high amplitude, running around about 15 seconds fast, which is within the performance specifications of this movement. It'd be nice if that was down a little bit more. We could probably do some adjustment of this one to make it run a little bit better, but realistically, that's not a bad figure when it comes to mechanical watch movement. So already I've had a couple of standout features for me for this one. The quality of it, that bezel action, how thin it is, and then it continues with this bracelet. This bracelet is absolutely phenomenal. It is really nice. Definitely a step up from other watches, especially in this price range, but to be honest, in prices double or triple this cost of this watch. Very nice, and having a nice bracelet really does then sort of lift the on-wrist experience as well. It's all brushed, polished, does have push pins, not screws unfortunately, but then we have a really nice clasp. Signed with Glycine, has actually a really cool sort of safety catch there. You can see on the side there's plenty of micro adjusts, double pusher, all milled inside, and we've got a fairly simple case back with some interesting sort of information there and a couple of, I think that's meant to be seals. I'm assuming that's the Glycine logo. I actually quite like a solid case back when it comes to dive watches because I think it sort of suits the sort of slightly tool feeling of a watch. And on wrist, there are two major factors that make this feel incredible. Firstly, as mentioned, that bracelet really does make this feel even better than you would expect. And then when we turn it around, the width of the watch. Such a thin automatic movement, this particular one giving you a nice thin wrist experience. And for a dive watch, it's almost a surprising feeling. You sort of go, oh, that feels nice. And you go, oh, it's really sitting down nicely on wrist. And wow, that's really nice, and it does really make a difference to this watch, and it's one of the things that make it really pop for me. So what do I like about this watch? What don't I like about it? And what would I change? Well, there's a lot to like, and I've mentioned it already. Price, quality, bezel action, that is a huge standout feature for me. How thin that is, and the bracelet, and the clasp, to be honest, that's really good as well. But there's one thing I probably don't love about it, and that is perhaps the dial is maybe a little bit plain. I think it's good. I think it looks fine. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. I'm not going to point to the dial and say there's any feature that I dislike, but there was probably one thing I would change if I could, and that is to make the dial a little bit more exciting, maybe by having something that's applied on there. Just give it a little bit of oomph, a little bit of wow factor. But realistically, I don't think it actually probably would improve the watch because it's so good as it is. And being a dive watch, being a tool watch, I think it is perfect for what it is meant to be. And it does it so well and it does it so nicely. But I want to talk about the price of this watch a touch more because I've mentioned it so many times. But to do that, let's flip back to me. Now, if you can find one of these watches at 550 Australian dollars, which I know you can because they are on ashford.com, then you are going to be getting an incredible watch, an incredibly well-made watch, a great movement inside of a watch at a really low price. But they are not all that price, unfortunately, not the entire range of combat subs. So you're going to have to search out the best one at the best price for you. And before I got hands-on with this watch, I have to admit I'd seen those prices of this watch, I'd seen reviews of these watches, and I thought that this is going to be a good watch for that money. But it wasn't really until I got hands-on with this watch that I realized that it is absolutely an amazing watch at that price. So if you can get one at that price and you like the look of this watch, I can't recommend it enough because it is something rather special. Because to find something else at that sort of price range that is this good quality, well, I've never found one. I haven't found any other watches that could compete with this watch at that 550 range of price. When it gets a little bit more expensive, however, then there may be some other watches that may compete with it. But you'll have to look into that yourself. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you did, then perhaps you might enjoy these ones next.